Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here. Now the game has already launched for a couple of days, close to a week now, and we've already seen at least 2 million FPL managers set their teams ready for game week 1. Now obviously this is still early days. I do imagine that everyone will still continue to tinker with their teams, but I think we can already start to identify some trends here, and that is what we're going to do in today's video, where I've picked out the highest owned assets in all the different categories, whether it's keepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards, and I've put together a team based on a 100 million budget, £100 million budget, which is what we all have. And likely what we're going to see here is the current template for game week 1. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this video, and if you do, please do drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. Now just a note as well, at the end of the video, what we're going to do with this template team is we're going to take a screenshot of it and we're going to put it into the Fantasy Football Hub My Team Tool, which has currently a new feature where you can import the screenshot straight into the app or the desktop, whichever one that you're using, and it allows you to just get your team right on there. You don't have to pick out your players one by one anymore, and they give you an AI rating as well. It's really good to tinker around using the Fantasy Football Hub tool. So if you guys are interested in that, do keep a lookout for it at the end of the video. So jumping straight into this draft, we see Raya in nets, and then we have Saliba, Vardiol, and Dan Burn. Now, talking about keepers first, Raya at 21.1% is the highest owned keeper. I think in general, I wouldn't say that Raya is my go-to keeper, but I do understand why there are at least 1 in 5 people going for David Raya. He is still the most expensive keeper in the game, right, at 5.5 million, but there's good reason for that. Arsenal kept 18 clean sheets last season, which was 5 clean sheets more than Man City or Everton, who came in second respectively, right? So in general, what I would say is that Arsenal's defense is a very, very strong defense, but to go for a 5.5 million keeper, considering all the other price rises that we've seen, whether it's in the midfield positions or even the forward positions, we've seen quite a couple of price rises there, and FPL are trying to make the pricing quite competitive so that we see some variations in drafts this season. I don't think we would be in a position where there's luxury to go for a 5.5 million keeper. I would likely still keep my goalkeeper budget at maximum to 5 million. I would think the default is a 4.5 million keeper in maybe like Sanchez, who everyone is hoping that he'll get the spot for Chelsea. If Sanchez is not the first choice keeper, there's also Petrovic or even Kepa also at 4.5 million. Aside from those, there's also Flecken at 4.5, there's also Sells at 4.5. So I think in that range, I would see a lot of value in just saving that extra million and putting the money elsewhere. And for this template draft as well, you see that Saliba is also in this draft, so at 41.1%, very, very highly owned. And obviously he's at 6 million, so he's seen a price rise from last season already. And he's pretty expensive because when I look at the other options within that price bracket of 6 million, there's Vardiol, who's also pretty highly owned at 31.2%, but I think what Vardiol offers at this 6 million price point is slightly more than what Saliba offers at that 6 million price point, because Vardiol is much more attacking. The average positions that he takes up is much higher up the field, and the likelihood of him getting attacking returns is much higher than Saliba, who will probably rely on set pieces. So already within the price bracket, when I compare assets, I don't think Saliba is that strong of an asset to go for. I do see the draw in getting Saliba, and that's because he's one of the more nailed Arsenal centre-backs. Obviously, Calafiori, I may be pronouncing his name wrongly, but he will be coming in likely, right, to Arsenal's defence, and where he slots in, it remains to be seen, but I still doubt that Saliba's position will be affected. If anything, maybe we see Gabriel drop out or something. We could see a lot of changes in the Arsenal backline, but at least I do agree Saliba is probably the most nailed out of everyone there. So I do see a good reason to go for him, and that's why 41.1% of people have already done so. But to kind of double up on the Arsenal defense, this is very expensive in 5.5 Raya and 6 million Saliba, so I probably wouldn't do that. At maximum, I'd probably just keep Saliba and then downgrade Raya to a 4.5. But that's just my own thoughts. And I think in general, when you look at Arsenal's fixtures over the next few games, it is quite a tricky run. They're not necessarily the top of the fixture taker in terms of difficulty, and obviously there are other teams out there with a better run of fixtures to keep clean sheets. Not to say that Arsenal aren't capable of keeping clean sheets in tough games, but I think I'd probably jump on the Arsenal defensive assets slightly later into the season. So I wouldn't say right now I have any Arsenal defensive coverage for my own team, but the template does seem as if going for double Arsenal defense is what people are doing at this point in time. So let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. For Vardiol at 31.2%, again, I've already mentioned that he offers a lot. The only concern I have here is whether he's going to be nailed or as nailed for minutes as last season, because we did see Ake drop out with an injury towards the end of last season. That obviously saw Vardiol come in much more, and then his performances, which were very convincing and even got a couple of goals, saw him keep that place even with Ake coming back towards the end. But will that continue for this season? I think we have to kind of keep it at the back of our minds. I don't think I'll take it for granted with any Man City player whether he's nailed or not. So just something to think about, but I do have him in my team as well, and I do understand why 31.2% FPL managers have gone for him. For the last defensive asset here is Dan Burn at 23.6%. Now, I think the Newcastle defense is not a defense that we kind of default to in general, but Dan Burn at 4.5 million offers a lot because he's nailed and he has pretty good set piece threat as well. When I look at the other 4.5 million assets, which there will be more 4.5 million defensive assets on the bench later on, a bit of a spoiler, but I do like Dan Burn because he's pretty much quite nailed. I don't foresee Botman or Lascelles coming back soon, so even if, let's say, Dan Burn does not play left back, he could very well fill in at centre back for a couple of games. He's pretty much going to be nailed in that Newcastle defense. The only concern for me is whether he will, whether Newcastle's defense is going to pick up and they're going to kind of keep the clean sheets that we saw the previous season, right, before the abysmal defensive season that we saw the last campaign. So that's something to think about, but in general, when I look at what he offers at the 4.5 million price tag, I do like it. And Newcastle's fixtures also does present pretty good rotation pairing with teams like Crystal Palace and Everton as well. So we'll do keep a lookout for that. I do also like him at a 23.6% ownership. People have seemed to go for him as well. So there we go with this defense as well as the goalkeeper choice. Let's now take a look at the midfielders for the Game Week 1 template. So in midfield, we have Cole Palmer, Mohamed Salah, Gordon, and Eze. Now, Cole Palmer at 56.3% is the highest owned player in the game right now. And that is quite incredible because he was the player that saw the biggest price increase this season. He's currently priced at 10.5 million, and a lot of people, or more than half of the FPL managers who've already set their teams, seem to think like he is the one to go for, right? So that's why many of them have already chosen him. What I think is, 10.5 million does pose a decision here as to whether we should actually go for him or not. Last season, it was very, very simple to go for him, and he was kind of a default 5.5 million asset to go for. At 10.5 million, when I consider the assets in that price point as well, we have Saka. We also have players like Phil Foden at 9.5 million, which is 1 million cheaper than Cole Palmer as well. So I think in general, we really do have to kind of think about whether Cole Palmer is worth that 10.5 million. What I would say is, I probably wouldn't say he's nailed in my team. In the ideal situation where he's not so expensive, I would obviously have him. But it does pose a question to me of, if I don't go for him, what other assets can I go for? Because if I don't go for Palmer, it could kind of enable maybe an upgrade from Saliba to someone like Trent, for example, where some FPL managers do want to go for Trent, right? So I think having that much money locked up in Cole Palmer is just something we do have to think twice about. Here's not to say that I won't go for him. It's just I do think about it more than if they priced him a little bit cheaper. So I do think that they did a good job with the pricing for Cole Palmer this season. In terms of the role that he will be playing, I think Enzo Maresca is a slightly different coach from Mauricio Pochettino. I think there will definitely be some change in philosophies, and that could also see Cole Palmer pick up a different role. But I would say that it is pretty difficult for Cole Palmer to continue to keep up the returns that he did last season. A lot of it was down to getting loads of penalties as well. With Chelsea continue to get a lot of penalties, that's also at the back of my mind. And also the numbers that he was putting up last season was truly quite incredible. Non-penalty, goal involvement was very, very high for him. I think I will wait a few weeks to see whether he's truly worth that price point, and obviously how Chelsea kind of start the season. But at 4 million cheaper, there's also Nkunku that kind of poses a bit of an alternative, whether we want to go for Nkunku as someone to cover the Chelsea attack instead of going for Cole Palmer, who's so expensive at 10.5 million. So things to consider there. 56.3% is very, very high, highest in the game right now. So let me know in the comments down below if you are one of those FPL managers with Cole Palmer. Now, next up, we have Salah at 33.1%. I think having Ipswich as the first fixture and him being the standout captain, because Erling Haaland has Chelsea away in game week 1. So obviously, the preferred captain would be Mohamed Salah, and I think a lot of us will be going for him simply because of that, and then maybe you can move on from him after that. But I do think that that has a part to play. And obviously now with a change in coach and maybe a bit of a change in the way that they play, we could see Mohamed Salah kind of come back into form as well, which is what a lot of us are expecting this season, because he's had some time off during the preseason, not in the Euros, not in the Copa Americas as well. So Mohamed Salah at 33.1%. Let me know in the comments if you do have him. Now, next up is Gordon and Eze, both relatively very budget options. I wouldn't say they're the cheapest, but they provide good value because Gordon is at 7.5 and Eze is at 7 million. Gordon obviously not on penalties, Eze is on penalties, but they do provide very different skill sets as well as what they bring to the table as an FPL asset. Gordon plays for a very attacking Newcastle side, and he's been very effective on that left wing, cutting in and getting a lot of shots. He's obviously someone that a lot of us think will continue to do well this season, so he's at 37.3%. For Eze, there is a bit of a concern whether his returns would be slightly dampened by Olise leaving, but I also do think like him being only priced at 7 million kind of makes me feel as if even if it does not work out, he still has at 7 million the penalties, and he also does have pretty much guaranteed minutes. He's nailed for 90 minutes in that Crystal Palace side, and I wouldn't say that Olise leaving Crystal Palace would necessarily make them that much of a weaker side. I mean, obviously in an ideal situation we still have Olise in that team, but now it could be a good situation for Eze where now he becomes the real true talisman for Crystal Palace, because everything would have to flow through him, and obviously he's also on a good number of set pieces as well for Crystal Palace. So I do think like Eze and Gordon provide very good value, and I do agree with the 37.3% that have gone with Gordon as well as the 33.2% that have gone with Eze. A lot of managers have gone for these midfielders. Obviously, by going for all these assets, you obviously lock out a couple of other players in that price point as well. I don't think Bowen is someone we'll be going for. He's at a similar price point to Gordon at 7.5. There's Phil Foden at 9.5 million as well. But we'll see in this draft that there's actually no Man City players, a bit of a spoiler. So also another player to consider, and those midfield spots are pretty high in demand. So we will have to think through who we want to fill up those spots with. But if not, let's take a look now at the forwards. So up front, we have Alexander Isak, João Pedro, and Ollie Watkins. Now, for Alexander Isak, he's at 54.7% ownership right now. It's pretty high and quite close to Cole Palmer, in fact. And I think the reason for this is because Callum Wilson is currently nursing a bit of a back injury, and it seems like it will be keeping him out for the first few game weeks. And if that is the case, then Alexander Isak becomes the starting striker for Newcastle, a very attacking Newcastle side that definitely still know how to attack. The defense may be a little bit shaky as we've seen from last season, but attackingly they are still a very strong outfit. And if Alexander Isak continues to keep the form that he had towards the end of last season going into the new season, he is someone that I think will be very hard to look past, especially because he has Southampton at home in game week 1. So I do agree with this pick, 54.7% ownership. He's also in my current game week 1 team. And then for João Pedro at 21.5%, he's actually someone that is a very good enabler at 5.5%, 5.5 million. He's really cheap, and he's on penalties, likely going to be a consistent starter for Brighton, because De Zerbi is no longer the coach at Brighton. It seems as if João Pedro would start to get consistent minutes. The only thing with João Pedro is that he missed out on he did not travel with the Brighton squad to Japan for their pre-season tour, because there is a bit of an injury that he's dealing with right now, but it does not seem very serious. And it seems as if he should be able to start the new season, or at least in game week 1. We will get more information obviously as pre-season goes on. But if not, there are also other alternatives at 5.5 million, like Armstrong from Southampton as well. Also decent considerations there. So that's for João Pedro. For Ollie Watkins at 56.2%, he is actually the second highest owned player in the game right now. And he's also someone that's seen quite a big price increase. He's at 9 million this season. And I think in general, when it comes to someone like Ollie Watkins, we saw what he could do last season, where he picked up so many goals and assists. I think a number of assists, when I drill into the stats, have come mostly because of fantasy assists, where maybe he just passes the ball and then someone like Bailey dribbles all the way and shoots. So it's more a fantasy assist than an actual real life assist. It remains to be seen whether he will be on penalties, because with Douglas Luiz leaving the Aston Villa side, there are still other penalty takers that Aston Villa have. There's Yuri Telemans, of course. There's also John McGinn. So some of these players could take penalties off Watkins. And I do remember at some point in time, Watkins was actually taking penalties for Aston Villa until he missed quite a couple in quick succession, and that's why other players like Douglas Luiz and Telemans stepped up to take the penalty kick. So keep an eye out for that one. But 56.2% of FPL managers have already gone for Ollie Watkins. Let me know if you have him down in the comments below. In terms of the bench options, there's Turner at 24.2%. He's more or less kind of the 4.0 million goalkeeper that people are going for, but honestly this spot is more of a bench for the spot, so I won't spend too much time on that. It's the other bench options there, kind of the enablers of this team, that I think would be slightly more interesting. So Joachim Anderson at 22.0% ownership, coming in at only 4.5 million for Crystal Palace. He's very nailed in that Crystal Palace side, who defensively look really strong. So I think that's why quite a number of FPL managers have gone for him. And also he does have that knack of picking up attacking returns. He is a centre back, but he does pick up quite a number of attacking returns. So he is someone that I think could be an interesting option at 4.5. I think there are other 4.5 million assets to look at, like maybe Mikalenko from Everton as well. But I don't think you can go too wrong with that. And I think in general, when I look at this team structure, you would generally be rotating Anderson with Dan Burn. So there is some good rotation pairs with Newcastle and Crystal Palace assets as well. Now for Winks as the midfield option of choice on the bench right now, he's played pretty much most games for Leicester last season. He is kind of the number 8 for them. Is really nailed in that squad, and I think what he offers for that team is kind of similar to what Endo offers at Liverpool. Kind of the glue in the midfield, and also someone that just holds the fort for Leicester. So in general, I wouldn't say there's going to be a lot of attacking returns for him, but what you get with Winks is guaranteed minutes. So 10.3% people have gone for him because he's only 4.5 million. If you can afford it, which actually this draft is able to afford, I would do Harry Winks up to Morgan Rogers from Aston Villa. It's only a 0.5 million upgrade, and Morgan Rogers at 5 million is much more attacking than Harry Winks, and it seems as if he's coming up as a really good option right now. He's had a really good preseason so far. In the 2 games that we've seen, he's already picked up 3 goals, and it seems like Diaby will be leaving Aston Villa, and that also means that it's more likely Morgan Rogers could get a regular run-in in the Aston Villa side under Unai Emery this coming season. So if that's the case, a 5 million starting attacker for an Aston Villa side who look very good attackingly as we've seen last season, I think that could be a bit of a gem as well. So do keep a lookout for that one. And then last on the bench, we have Harwood Bellis. 14.8% ownership. It seems as if people are going for him as the default 4.0 million defensive asset as a bench fodder, just to have on the bench and call on if needed. So let me know in general with this draft, what do you think of it? It has a 3-4-3 default kind of formation there, and it does seem as if 3 at the back is likely what most teams are going for at this point in time because of, I would say, that the bonus points changes that we've seen where it favors more attackers seems to be the case. So let me know what formation you're using in the comments down below, and also how close your team is to this template draft that we've seen here for game week 1. But if not, let's now take a look at this draft when we put it in to the Fantasy Football Hub My Team Tool. So this is the Fantasy Football Hub My Team Tool, and what I've done is I've loaded the team that we've seen in the graphic just now into the My Team tool to provide us a rating of the team, as well as having a look at the predicted points that it offers for this particular game week. So it has a 93% team rating overall. So this rating here is what it thinks how well it would do for the next few game weeks. It's at least about 5 to 6 game weeks, kind of an indication. For the predicted points, it is obviously game week specific here. So 65.3 points is what this team is predicted to get. How I usually use the predicted points function is I usually try to aim for about 65 to 70 predicted points every single game week, because when I look at the past few seasons, a generally good score is actually getting about 65 to 70 points every single game week on average. So this is a good starting point, and I think this draft, the template draft, looks pretty strong for this reason. And then there is a 92% game week rating as well, right? So if I were to make one change to this draft, as I've mentioned just now, I would actually just do Harry Winks out for Morgan Rogers. I do think like this is a change that could really make this draft a lot stronger. And then now let's take a look at how the team looks like over the course of the next few game weeks. So for game week 1, you're likely set up with this squad. If you go with the template draft, Captain Mo Salah is pretty likely. If not, you could captain Alexander Isak as well. And then let's jump forward to game week 2 now. So for game week 2, it actually does have a game week rating of 88% and predicted points of 64.8, still pretty strong. And you would see that the draft is also set up quite nicely. If you do want to make a change, I think we could try to improve this draft by getting Anderson in for Dan Burn here, and that has already improved the game week rating as well as the predicted points as we've seen here. Captaincy could also be on Mo Salah, but this is the game week where Erling Haaland has Ipswich, as we've seen here, where Vardiol is playing Ipswich as well in game week 2. So something to think about for those of you who aren't going with Erling Haaland. But if not, into game week 3 as well, still a very decent side. You could very well just swap out Anderson, who's playing Chelsea away, with someone like Dan Burn, who has Tottenham at home. Playing at home is a slightly better fixture. But in general, this is how I use the transfer tinkering tool, and how I think this tool could really help coming into the new season. So there we go. In game week 1, we're back here with this squad. And I think in general, the template team is a template team for a reason. Let me know how close you are to this team and what changes you would make to it. My team is definitely not exactly the same as this draft. If you would like to check out my team, I've already posted a video. It is the first video that we've done for the preseason campaign for the 2024-25 season. And let me know what you think of that draft as well in that video. If not, thank you guys for watching to this point. Do check out Fantasy Football Hub with the first link in the description. But if not, I will see you guys in more FPL preseason content coming very soon. Bye-bye.